This could be a real adventure. Wait, I'll pass the barrier.
Point number 1, so is being at the front of these boarding tubes volunteer only? Because if not, I seriously question the mental health and stability of these guys who must realise they're gonna get shot dead before even getting out of the tube. Like, this is some serious D-Day Normandy landing type stuff, more so than golden age of piracy. At least back in the late 17th, early 18th century, when you're running across the plank to another ship, you know the crew you're attacking might not have that many guns, and even if they do, after they've been fired, the person holding the gun won't have enough time to reload it before you're driving your sword into their stomach. This though, if the body ship's crew had positioned themselves better, they could have stopped every single pirate from getting out of the tubes, because they don't need to reload after every shot. Point number 2, damn, is this really the first time we've seen a Shistavinen in live action since A New Hope? No, wait, I'm not talking about this guy who's in both the original and the post-release edited, some might even say tampered with versions of A New Hope. That's Arliel Scouse, best pronunciation I can do, I'm sorry, who's in fact a Defel, not a Shistavinen. No, I'm talking about this guy who was in the original A New Hope, Lak Sivrak, a much easier to pronounce name, but who was replaced with a different alien in the post-release edited versions. Point number 3, makes sense to me that Frida Berlin from Orange is the New Black would absolutely be a pirate and would betray Captain Sildo just like she did Red. Point number 4, the people complaining about seeing a regular neighborhood in Star Wars and being like, this isn't why I watch Star Wars, are these same people who always complain about returning to Tatooine, or about other desert planets that just look like we've returned to Tatooine, or about planets that look just like Coruscant, etc. And they still can't help but complain when they'd be given a new Detroit Become Human looking location with no sand anywhere to be seen. Point number 5, hey, keep your eyes on the road. Watch where you're going. No! Point number 6, what kind of dystopian hellhole is this place? Robots everywhere ordering people about, robot drivers and teachers and housekeepers taking jobs away from living people. I wonder what Hellgate will think about all this. Point number 7,
Rico. Rico! Pay attention.
Point number 8, yeah, this is giving serious goat test vibes from Fallout 3. Answer a bunch of random questions and get given a job you may or may not even like. Very dystopian. At least the kids in Fallout 3 who had to take the goat were 16, not like the kids we see here who are much younger. Point number 9,
We all have a place in the great work.
Point number 10, so does Undersecretary Farah have issues with her hearing or something? Because if she was sat right there the whole time, how does she not hear Fern and the housekeeper droid? Point number 11, god damn it Mrs. Ick, control your frog dog and keep it off the damn road. Point number 12, you asked if there were any questions, you useless pile of junk, and Neil was asking a question about a late student. This is always something I hate in movies and TV shows, it's when people don't listen to the kids even though they should. Point number 13, oh man, all the old-timey slang with crud, wastoid, wizard, it really takes me back. So watching all media that use those slang words. Come on, I'm 31, not 131. I never heard wastoid all that much, but crud was used a bunch in Codename Kids Next Door, which I watched when I was a kid on Cartoon Network. And as for wizard, Michael Cera's character in Juno would use it, plus Kitster said it in Phantom Menace, and much more recently, so did Din Djarin in episode 5 of the Book of Boba Fett. Point number 14, raise your hand if you've seen the Star Wars Holiday Special. That's what I thought, and I don't blame you. Well, in that special, Chewbacca's son, Lumpawaru, watches the same holographic performance that Wim sees Neil's siblings watching. Yes, you heard correctly, this is from the Star Wars Holiday Special. They put a Star Wars Holiday Special reference in this show. Point number 15, so whatever the barrier is that covers the planet, while it can't stop ships from leaving the atmosphere, and presumably can't stop ships from entering it, or else how did the Onyx Cinder crash land on at Atin, it does seem to mess with the night sky to the point the kids don't immediately recognize stars when they see them. So most likely, rather than it being a barrier that stops things from getting in/out, it's a barrier that stops people from being able to see in/out, explaining why At Atin is later said to be a myth by the pirates because they can't find it. It's hidden by the barrier. Point number 16, could they be any more on the nose with naming this one-eyed, peg-legged, captain-loving pirate robot Smee? And to add to the connections to Peter Pan, Jude Law just played Captain Hook in the 2023 movie Peter Pan and Wendy, which was directed by David Lowery, who also directed this episode. Alright, just kidding, I'm not actually mad. I actually like the references to Peter Pan by naming the droid Smee. Plus, if you were in doubt of how piratey this show was going to be in the first episode, this episode just blows those doubts right out of the water. Point number 17. So for the planets SM33 mentions, we have Atolon, which appeared in Star Wars Rebels, and Aldhani, which appeared in Andor. This is the first time though we've ever heard about the planet called Al-Alcor. Point number 18, so not only have we been shown futuristic representations of pirate iconography, like the boarding tubes being boarding planks, Captain Silver's helmet looking like a pirate hat, SM33's eye and leg being broken, being like him wearing an eye patch and having a peg leg, but apparently the Onyx Cinder has actual period looking pirate clothing and items on board. The sword, the hat Wim puts on, the compass, the spyglass. Just where did they get all these antiques? Oh wait, this is a pirate ship, so they probably just stole it from another ship. Where did that other ship get all these antiques? Point number 19. Fun fact, this isn't the first time Port Borgo, or Borgo Prime, has been in a Star Wars story, as it appeared for the first time in a bunch of the Young Jedi Knights Star Wars Legends young adult novels all the way back in the 1990s. And it was described as, according to the quote for Borgo Prime on Wikipedia, a place filled with people who have no conscience, thieves, murderers, creatures who will just as soon kill you as greet you. Point number 20. Oh hey, would you look at that, a teak. One of them hasn't been seen in live action since the 1985 movie Ewoks The Battle for Endor. Point number 21. And speaking of creatures that haven't appeared in live action for a long time, that's Fuzzball, Captain EO's sidekick from the 1986 short film Captain EO starring Michael Jackson as Captain EO. That was played at Disney parks until 1998 but then made a return in 2010 as a tribute to Michael Jackson after his death. Point number 22. So you know this guy KBC is trying to sell his little attack droids? Well, according to Wikipedia, apparently his name is, no joke, Toot Oriole. Point number 23. So the credits Wim's dad gave him were Old Republic credits, which suggests the Republic Under Secretary Farah was referring to when she visited Wim's class would be what people in the rest of the galaxy would call the Old Republic. But what did they mean when they say Old Republic? Wasn't all the Old Republic stuff put into Legends when Disney bought Star Wars? Why, yes it was. The Old Republic, when this guy says it at least, must be referring to the High Republic era. Now, why the High Republic and not the Galactic Republic before or after? Well, you know how Under Secretary Farah mentioned the Great Work back when she visited Wim's class? Well, the Great Works, according to Wikipedia, were a group of projects undertaken by the Galactic Republic under Supreme Chancellor Lina Soh during the High Republic era. Now, there were a variety of Great Works being worked on at the time, but none from what I can find really fit the planet of At-Atin. So, if they are continuing a project created by Lina Soh, it's a mystery as to what it is and how they haven't completed it since starting around 234 BBY when Lina Soh became the Supreme Chancellor. Point number 24. So this guy you can see in the first episode, but I wanted to wait till now to talk about him, is none other than Vane, former member of Gorian Shah's gang, who appeared in episodes 1 and 5 of the third season of The Mandalorian. But despite joining a new pirate gang, he still fares no better when he gets into any kind of confrontation. Point number 25.
This is not.
Wait, did you hear that?
This is not.
Point number 26. Okay, so we've already talked about this show's references to Peter Pan. Now let's get into its references to Treasure Island. We've got Captain Silvo instead of Captain Long John Silver, Wim instead of Jim Hawkins, At-Atin is the Treasure Island, or Treasure Planet I guess you could say. The creature that lives in SM33 could be seen as being like Long John Silver's pet parrot Captain Flint, and Jude Law's character Jod Na Narwood, who may or may not be but most likely is Captain Silvo, has a similar first name to John Silver, making it even more likely that Jod and Silvo are the same character. Point number 27. Speaking of Jod, if he is in fact Force sensitive, which is up for debate, the Force theme playing as the key floats into the cell and him looking like he's wearing a Jedi robe was all pretty on the nose, that's all I'm saying. Then why has he never used his powers before to grab the key and escape? Have his captors just never hung the key there before, or did he believe even if he got out of his cell, he wouldn't be able to make it off Port Borgo without being caught? Or did he really just have no inclination at all to escape until hearing these kids talk about being from At-Atin, and maybe even seeing the evidence of that via the Old Republic credits in Wim's sock? Point number 28. All in all, I really enjoyed these first 2 episodes. The kids are pretty good actors and aren't annoying, so hopefully they won't get any hate like Jake Lloyd did, and the mysteries that have been set up at Atin, the Onyx Cinder and SM-33 Jodhnar Narwood are all intriguing, and I'm interested to find out the answers to them all. Also, this show is a combination of two things I love: Star Wars and pirates. When it comes to pirates, I love Peter Pan, especially the movie Hook. I love most of the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, the Goonies as well, which just like this show is a story about a bunch of kids and involves pirate shenanigans. Can't forget Treasure Planet, and also specifically Muppets Treasure Island. One Piece is one of my favourite animes, and in the never-ending war between pirates and ninjas, pirates have my eternal support. I can't wait to watch the rest of the season, and I'm excited to see where the story goes. To round all this off, my most disliked part of the first 2 episodes goes to adults just not goddamn listening to the kids. I think this pet peeve of mine stems from not being listened to when I was a kid, and I just can't help but sympathise and feel bad for kids in movies and TV shows when they're being ignored. And my most liked part of the first 2 episodes goes to how Fern's lie that she killed SM-33's former captain, which makes her the captain now, actually works. I would say that's mutiny for you, but of course Fern wasn't part of the crew, so it's more like Necromonger rules from the Chronicles of Riddick.
You keep what you kill.
Very interesting. As an astrogation problem.
Point number 1. Okay, let's just immediately get this out of the way and address the elephant in the room, and no, I don't mean Neil's mum. I mean KB's parents. Why are both of KB's parents here? I get why Farrah and Wendell are here, since Fern and Wim seem to come from single-parent households, but only Neil's mum Numa is here. Where's Neil's dad? Couldn't he get out of going to work? Does he have a more important job than KB's parents, who were both able to make it to this meeting? Point number 2, looking at the shape this circular sofa and the lights surrounding it make, it reminded me of the symbol for the pre-Empire Galactic Republic, but then I realised the roundel doesn't have this many spokes coming off of its central circle. Point number 3, something I just completely forgot to mention in my previous video when talking about how dystopian At-Atin seems, is that the heads of all these safety droids are literally security cameras. At-Atin is literally a surveillance state. Point number 4.
I'm submitting a petition for an immediate audience with the supervisor.
I wonder who or what this supervisor will turn out to be. Someone flesh and blood or a robot? And will they be a species / model we've seen before, or will they be something new? Point number 5.
If you could escape at any time, what did you need our help for?
One of the big questions everyone was asking after seeing episode 2, and KB immediately asks it, and we get the quite straightforward answer of,
Without a ship, what use was freeing myself from the cell?
I appreciate the writers know what questions we'd have and don't mess around with giving us the answers. My question after hearing that though is, couldn't Jod just stow away or pay his way onto another ship? But then thinking about it, I answered those questions myself. Despite wearing a helmet when boarding the ship in the first episode, he probably doesn't wear it all the time. He isn't Din Djarin, you know, so his face might be well known amongst all the pirates. So even if he procured himself some money by using the Force to snatch someone's purse off of them, he'll just end up getting recognised when trying to pay someone to let him onto their ship. And as for stowing away, it'd be a little difficult since you'd have to ferry over and attach to a ship, then somehow get the doors open without any of the crew still on the ship or on this station keeping an eye on their ship noticing. Point number 6.
So I guess KB's got the Force too.
I doubt it was the Force, and probably something more to do with her cybernetic attachments that allowed KB to tell that a droid was coming up the way Jod just said was empty, which he probably assumed it was because if he is in fact actually Force sensitive, he was just sensing for guards, living beings. He wasn't sensing for droids, if someone with the Force can even sense droids, which is something that's been long debated. Droids aren't living, so a Jedi shouldn't be able to sense them, but if they can't sense them, how do they know when and where a droid is going to fire their blaster so that they can block it with their lightsaber?
A good question for another time.
Point number 7, am I mistaken, or is that the pirate Hondo Onaka's ship, the Katuni? Point number 8,
We're not going back for a droid.
if you're going to judge Jod's character based on what he thinks of droids, just remember Obi-Wan in the Clone Wars show also didn't seem to think much of droids. In Season 1, Episode 6, when Anakin tells Obi-Wan he lost R2-D2, Obi-Wan says,
Well, R2 units are a dime a dozen. I'm sure you'll find a suitable replacement.
Obi-Wan sees droids as just tools, not beings you can form a friendship and a bond with. That's why he didn't care all that much when R4 got their head ripped off. Yet, somehow, Obi-Wan is still considered a great guy by fans, despite treating droids the same way Pong Krell treats clones.
You are making a mistake by crossing me, clone.
It's Captain, sir.
They're just disposable tools. They're a dime a dozen. It doesn't matter if one gets lost, just replace it. Point number 9.
It's Silver. Is that you?
Again, just like with giving us the answer as to why Jod didn't break out before meeting the kids, the writers don't mess about in confirming that Jod is in fact Captain Silvo by having Benjar here, voiced by Alfred Molina, you know Doc Ock from Spider-Man, recognize him. Like, it's obvious Jod and Silvo are the same person, so I'm glad the writers didn't try to drag it out and make it some kind of big reveal later on. Point number 10. So not only is Hondo's ship here, but there's also a Star Tours Starspeeder 1000 as well apparently. Point number 11.
Can't say I remember no at-atting.
It's suspicious that at the mention of at-atting, SM33 says the exact same thing he said in episode 2.
Can't say I remember no at-atting.
Could it be a response he's been programmed to say whatever he's asked about at-atting? Or could it be literal, that he literally cannot say that he remembers at-atting? In any case, 33 being a robot and having memory problems in relation to a planet with treasure makes me think of Ben from Treasure Planet, who is also a robot with memory problems in relation to a planet with treasure. Also, now's a good time to point out something else I forgot to mention in my previous video, and it's that 33 is voiced by Nick Frost of Spaced and Cornetto trilogy fame. Point number 12, I love the subverting of expectations, a scary phrase for some people, I know, of expecting Jod to continue talking about at-atting after he literally says,
So, at-atting.
But then he just finishes eating and doesn't say anything else about the planet. Point number 13. So with everyone's job on at-atting being seemingly related to money and might also connect to whatever the great work is, the main theory I've seen about what at-atting actually is that it's some form of planet-sized bank or treasury. If, say, some kind of galaxy-wide economic catastrophe occurred, then the Republic would have the wealth stored on the hidden planet of at-atting to fall back on. And later we learn that at-atting is just one of a group of planets collectively referred to as the Jewels of the Old Republic, with all the planets being found and destroyed except for at-atting. The most popular candidate for finding and destroying these planets is of course the Empire, though they must have used something other than the Death Star to destroy the planets, since Alderaan was the first planet to ever be blown up by the first Death Star. And Sidious most likely would have known about the location of most or maybe even all the jewels of the Old Republic due to him previously being the Supreme Chancellor of the Galactic Republic. But why were the other planets destroyed but not at-atting? Well, my personal theory is that the great works of those planets were beneficial to Sidious and the Empire. One planet's great work could have been based around weapons, another could have been based around cloning, etc. So the Empire showed up on the planet, took everything they wanted, recruited who they could, killed the rest, then destroyed the planets to make sure they could never be found by people who might discover something the Empire missed and left behind. And with the Empire's preference for using unpaid slave labor and most likely the incentives for people to join the Empire not being monetary but giving them for free somewhere to live and a guaranteed 3 meals a day, I would suspect the Empire wasn't struggling for money, and so they'd have no reason to show up at-atting. Point number 14.
I calculated the odds.
Never tell me the odds.
Point number 15.
She might stab us in the back.
I love how Jod plants this little seed of doubt and distrust in the kids towards his friend, so that if in the event this friend betrays him, the kids will be more likely to side with him over his friend. Point number 16. In both Legends and canon, there's already a character called Crimson Jack. In Legends, they appeared in a series of Star Wars comics published by Marvel in 1977. He was a pirate nicknamed Redbeard by Han Solo on account of the colour of his hair and beard. Red, and it was by Han's blaster that Crimson Jack's life came to an end during a series of encounters between the two between A New Hope and The Empire Strikes Back. Crimson Jack in canon is also a pirate and still has red hair, but rather than having
A great big bushy beard.
he just has a big old mustache, and most likely at this point not calling himself Crimson Jack. One, because it's one of Jod's aliases, and two, the Marvel published comic series he appears in, Halcyon Legacy, is set in 34 ABY. For reference, Skeleton Crew takes place around 9 ABY during like the Mandalorian show, and The Force Awakens takes place in 34 ABY, which explains why this mustache haver tries to claim a bounty put out by the First Order.
Don't trust anyone with a mustache.
Maybe this could be a Dread Pirate Roberts from the Princess Bride kind of situation, in that Jod at some point abandons or passes on the alias Crimson Jack when he's done using it. Point number 17, a know-it-all owl called Kim. You get it? Kim Archimedes, the know-it-all owl from the 1963 Disney movie The Sword in the Stone. You get it?
What?
Kim, voiced by Alia Shawkat, maybe from Arrested Development, also has a cybernetic attachment that reminds me of Lobots from The Empire Strikes Back called the AJ6 Cyborg Construct, which is, reading straight from Wikipedia, designed to increase the user's productivity. However, it would often erase their personality and occasionally cause their behavior to become erratic. And speaking of Lobot's cybernetic attachment, KB also apparently possesses something similar. Now you might say, obviously, but I thought her cybernetics just covered her ears and then included the visor, but in actuality it goes all the way around the back of her head and is just covered by her hair that's grown long enough to hide it. Kim and KB sharing cybernetic attachments could also be how they stay in touch in the future, but we'll just have to wait and see. Point number 18, I guess during the process of hiding the planets that make up the Jewels of the Old Republic, the location of the planets was completely erased from public knowledge, but not the existence of the planets themselves and their names. Or how else would At-Atin become a widely known fairy tale, you know? Point number 19, lots of speculation as to who Jod actually is. Some believe he's a Padawan who wasn't that far into their training when Order 66 happened and who managed to escape. That's why he can only do basic Force stuff and why he says he's lost and alone. Some believe he's just a random guy who's Force sensitive, a nobody just like Rey, until JJ Abrams decided otherwise. And some even believe he might actually be Obi-Wan's nephew, because if not Rey, why not this guy? Since in the show Obi-Wan Kenobi, Obi-Wan tells Leia he believes he might have had a brother, and Jod makes a noise to distract some guards just like Obi-Wan makes a noise to distract some stormtroopers in A New Hope. Yes, seriously, that's pretty much all the evidence people have to connect Jod to Obi-Wan somehow. Anyway, I lean more in the direction of Jod just being some guy who happens to be Force sensitive, and him saying he's lost and alone is either just him playing on the kid's sympathy or because he's lost and alone now after his crew's mutiny. Point number 20.
I'm sorry. They got us.
Point number 21.
We got him!
Could you imagine if Fern or Wim had actually managed to land a lethal shot on an X-Wing and killed the pilot? That'd be some major childhood trauma and no mistake. Point number 22, was anyone else expecting one of these X-Wing pilots to be Carson Taver? The dude shows up everywhere, so I wouldn't have been at all surprised to see him here as well. To round all this off, my most disliked part of the episode goes to Jod being completely irresponsible and putting two kids behind the controls of some laser guns. It's like if in real life you told a 10-year-old to man a mounted machine gun but only to lay down suppressing fire. And yes, I know he said,
Just keep them back.
but what if, like I said not that long ago, one of the kids had actually managed to land a killing blow on an X-Wing? You know what, maybe he is a Jedi then. Turning children into soldiers has kind of been their thing since the Clone Wars after all. And my most liked part of the episode goes to the conversation between Jod and SM-33. Jod trying to intimidate 33, then laughing it off when 33 intimidates him right back. Then 33 just saying something to say something when answering that he knows the kids are
Definitely from somewhere.
and finally giving Jod the double. Love it.
Can't say I remember no At-Atin.
Point number 1, looking around online, I've seen people say these satellites remind them of the satellites used in Operation Cinder, an operation set up by Sidious so that in the event of his death, climate-controlling satellites will target both Empire and Rebel planets, destroying them all via severe weather, as punishment for the Empire for letting him die and for the Rebels for killing him. I've also seen people wondering if these satellites could somehow be at Akron's version of a barrier. While I agree they do look similar to Operation Cinder satellites, I disagree about them being at Akron's barrier. This planet's barrier is the same as At-Atin's barrier, a nebula, and you can tell the planet's in a nebula due to the coloured hue of space around the planet, and the fact it was one of Kim's search parameters when trying to find At-Atin. This makes me wonder if all the jewels are located in nebulas and that's why they're all so hard to find. Point number 2.
Do you think maybe we fell asleep for 100 years like the tales of the night?
Was anyone else at first thinking along the same kind of lines as Wim that some weird time shenanigans were going on? Like a reverse interstellar type situation where every hour away from At-Atin equates to 7 years passing on the planet? Point number 3, they just had to sneak in another Star Wars holiday special circus performance reference, didn't they? Point number 4,
At-Akron been playing tricks on me memory circuits.
33 saying being on At-Akron is playing tricks on his memory circuits might be an explanation as to why he didn't mention At-Akron when he was listing out planets to Fern in episode 2. Being back on the planet has jogged his memory of the planet. Point number 5, if you're enjoying the video so far, give it a like to let me know, and if you're interested in seeing more, then make sure to subscribe. Point number 6, did anyone else think it was a bit goofy the way 33 was twitching all over the place during this scene? He's just all jerky out of nowhere, like he's obviously being controlled like a puppet, whereas before he was pretty rigid in his movements. Also, the creature inside his head must have done some damage, since after it jump scares Jod, smoke just starts pouring out of 33. The jump scare and the smoke happening as 33 appear to be remembering At-Atin might just be a coincidence, or maybe that little creature is more intelligent than we think and is part of making sure 33 doesn't remember At-Atin. Like, could you imagine if it turns out that creature is 33's old captain or something? Probably not, but would be insane if true. Point number 7, anyone else get the feeling the identity of this statue might become important later on? Like, why else would the writers make it so its head is missing if not to make us wonder who it is a statue of? And why make us wonder who it is a statue of if it isn't someone important to the story? Point number 8, something is definitely up with the way KB's been acting. Since leaving At-Atin, she seems to be becoming more emotionless and odd. She doesn't react at all when the statue gets blasted and then just tilts her head and stares at it, which could be just her being emotionless and odd or her somehow recognizing the statue. I think it could be read either way. And then later Wim goes to high-five her and she seems confused by this right after blasting all her targets like she's a living aimbot. Maybe it has something to do with the medical condition that her mum's mentioned in the previous episode, or maybe it could be due to her cybernetic attachment. If it is indeed like the one worn by Lobot, which can often erase someone's personality, as I mentioned in my previous video. Actually, for all we know, her medical condition and her cybernetic attachment could be one and the same. Point number 9, speaking of KB seemingly becoming emotionless, what organ of the human body is most associated with emotions? Well, the heart, of course, so you could say KB is becoming heartless. This episode focuses on the fact that Neil is a bit of a coward. He has no courage. Wim does things without really thinking it through first. He's pretty brainless. And Fern is the captain, the leader of the group, trying to figure out how to get them all back home. There's no place like it after all, except At-Akron with its identical buildings, and presumably all the other jewels as well, but ignoring that, each of the kids match up with the main hero characters of The Wizard of Oz. Fern is Dorothy, Wim is the Scarecrow, Neil is the Cowardly Lion, and KB is the Tin Man. Some see the supervisor of At-Atin as being the great and powerful and mysterious wizard, but I have seen others suggest that Jod fits the role. He was great when he was a pirate captain, he's powerful in that he's force sensitive, and he's definitely mysterious since we don't really know that much about him. Other than that, he's also lost and alone, just like the kids, which also connects him to the wizard, who just like Dorothy isn't originally from Oz. And 33 is Toto or something, or TikTok from Return to Oz, since you know they're both mechanical men and pretty good at hand-to-hand combat. Point number 10, wait, is Haina French? I thought only Twi'leks could be French. Maybe a distant ancestor of hers came from Ryloth, the only French planet in all of Star Wars. Point number 11.
Are you guys like an army of kids battling the adults for control over the planet?
Wim would be such a fan of Peter Pan, Codename Kids Next Door, and Jedi Apprentice, The Defenders of the Dead. Point number 12. I love Haina's unnecessary slides and flips. It's something a kid would do just to show off. Plus, she's French and we all know how they all love their parkour. Some think it's making fun of unnecessary spins in other Star Wars media, like that one guy in Book of Boba Fett. And when you consider this episode was directed by David Kwan and David Scheinert, the guys who directed Everything Everywhere All at Once, then yeah, Hayner doing unnecessary stunts does kinda make sense. Point number 13, oh hey, is that Matthew Kassovitz? If you've got no idea who that is, if you've ever seen Amelie or The Fifth Element, then you've seen Matthew Kassovitz. Point number 14.
Sadly, we do not concern ourselves with off-worlders beyond trading hides for ammunition.
So despite being one of the hidden worlds of the Jewels of the Old Republic, off-world visitors to At Akron is apparently a regular thing. Presumably, after its discovery long ago, its location became common knowledge enough for trade to become a thing, which explains why we see both Troik and Hatan wearing helmets very similar to those that were used by the Empire. I wonder as well, did this planet end up like this after being found and destroyed like Kim says all the jewels were? Or did it become an ashy waste due to the ongoing war between the Troik and the Hatan? Point number 15, what kind of school has a big ass fucking gun built onto its roof? And since all the buildings on this planet are seemingly identical to those on At Atin, does that mean the school on At Atin also has a big ass fucking gun built onto its roof as well? Is this going to end up being a literal Chekhov's gun? Point number 16,
Captain Fern and her crew will honor us by leading us into battle.
this really goes to show just how much of an asshole Strix is. He might have been serious in saying on At Akron they treat kids like adults, but I doubt they give adults only a few hours trying to shoot targets, then make them take points as they march into enemy territory and then order them to scout ahead blindly. Like, I get he allows Hayner to go with them, but he probably only did it because she essentially demanded, and I'm willing to bet she's actually had proper training, not just a few hours trying to shoot tin cans. Also, later we see the journey to the supervisor's tower isn't even that dangerous or difficult, which just shows Strix was lying about that as well to manipulate the kids. Seriously, what an arsehole. Point number 17, so not only do the Troik and Hatan use Empire looking helmets, but this guy has a visor that reminds me a lot of the eye portion of Kylo Ren's helmet. So is this visor from the Empire as well? Is this what Kylo Ren bases the eye portion of his helmet design on? Point number 18, it'd be interesting if it turned out Wim still has the same number of credits as he did before, and it turns out Jod got the EOPs a different way, either by being a pirate or by being a Force user. I don't agree with the theory though that Jod pulled an Anakin and killed all the Hatans, unless he's somehow more powerful in the Force than he's letting on, and he's more in the camp of the dark side than the light. Point number 19, Jod must have bought back the Onyx Cinder as well, because I can't imagine the Hatans not trying to claim it for their own. I don't want another Bestoon legacy left untouched on the planet Pasana for years situation again. Point number 20, seeing the inside of the supervisor's room for the first time, my initial thought was, that big mechanical looking thing hanging from the ceiling is the supervisor, like it's a big old computer or droid brain or something. Anyone else have that thought? Point number 21, so this supervisor tower has pillars with coordinates to the other jewels, but the ones to At Atin have been destroyed, which means the next course for the kids to set is to head to the supervisor tower on any of the other jewels, and find out the coordinates to At Atin from the pillars there. Presuming, of course, At Akron isn't just a one-off on having identical buildings to At Atin, and that the coordinates haven't been destroyed on all the other jewels by 33 as well, which would take time granted and could prove difficult if the other towers happen to be still inhabited, but someone willing to murder to hide the location of their treasure, I think wouldn't mind putting in the time to also destroy the coordinates on all the towers as well, just to be extra sure no one finds At Atin. Point number 22, just like with answering why didn't Jod escape from the brig earlier and if Jod and Silvo are the same person, the question of does 33 actually remember At Atin but has been ordered not to has been answered pretty quickly. It's not been needlessly dragged out, which again I appreciate since it didn't need to be. Though I guess when 33 was ordered to forget about At Atin, his memories of the planet weren't actually deleted but were just locked away. This could either be a bit of an oversight by 33's previous captain, or it was intentional, so that if anyone did get him to remember, he'd then tear them limb from limb. A trap for those looking for the treasure, just as Captain Flint in Treasure Planet laid a trap for those who found his treasure. Point number 23, and speaking of Captain Flint, the original character from Treasure Island, he murdered all of his crew members who helped him bury his treasure, just like how 33's former captain murdered any of his crew who saw the coordinates to At-Atin. Point number 24. I love these perspective shots that make it seem like 33 is towering over us, just like how he's towering over the kids. It makes him feel even more menacing. To round all this off, my most disliked part of the episode goes to the way Strix treats the kids, acting like he respects them when in reality, he just wanted to use them as cannon fodder. What an arsehole. And my most liked part of the episode goes to Neil. Did you actually think I was going to go this whole review without talking about this absolute ray of sunshine? I love everything to do with him in this whole episode. Him giving his food to the hungry kids, his conversations with Haina, him walking out in front of his friends when they're forced to scout ahead, him throwing a rock at 33 to stop him from tearing the other kids limb from limb, showing that even if he thinks he is a coward, that he thinks he's weak, he actually can be brave and tough when he needs to be. From what I've seen online, Neil became everyone's favourite character after this episode, and that doesn't surprise me. I mean, look at him. You just want to pinch his cheek. He's so cute.
You have a lot to learn about pirates.
Point number 1.
Don't let anyone see it.
Proceeds to leave it out in the open for anyone to see it. It even has a flashing light to draw maximum attention. I mean, cover it with some papers or something, man. Point number 2. So now we officially learn the name of the ship, Onyx Cinder, and the name of 33's old captain, Tack Reynard. Reynard could be named for Richard Donner, Reynard is Donner backwards of course, who directed and co-produced The Goonies, a movie about a bunch of kids and a family of criminals racing against each other to find the hidden treasure of the legendary pirate One-Eyed Willie. Not gonna lie though, I'm a little disappointed to find out 33's former captain's name is Tack Reynard, as I was hoping it would instead be something that was a play on Flint, just like how Jod Silvo sounds like it's a play on Long John Silver. Point number 3. It turns out 33 doesn't actually remember how to get to At-Atin. I guess him remembering At-Atin in the last episode was just him remembering it's actually a thing, and that he was ordered to murder anyone who got him to remember that it is actually a thing. Point number 4. So rather than heading to any of the other jewel planets, finding its respective supervisor tower, and reading the coordinates to At-Atin from the pillars located in said tower, that is all presuming At-Akron wasn't just a one-off in having the exact same buildings as At-Atin, that the other supervisor towers also contain pillars with coordinates to the other jewel planets, and that Tack Reynard and 33 didn't take the time to destroy the coordinates to At-Atin on all the pillars on all the jewels, like viewers of the show pointed out, including myself in my previous video, would be the most logical thing for Jod and the kids to do next. The kids and Jod instead choose to head to Reynard's secret lair, where 33 says his former captain will have stored At-Atin's coordinates. A decision that you might not consider logical, but definitely falls into the realm of fantastical, which fits better in my opinion, since stories about hunting for pirate treasure are often fantastical in nature. And of course, the genre of Star Wars itself is sci-fi fantasy. Point number 5. If you're enjoying the video so far, give it a like to let me know. And if you're interested in seeing more, then make sure to subscribe and ding the bell. Point number 6. Does Skull Ridge Mountain make anyone else think of Skull Mountain, the Six Flags roller coaster? I wonder if giving a location in Star Wars a similar name to a theme park competitor's ride was looked at and approved of by the Disney higher-ups or not. Point number 7.
Stabbing him with his own dagger.
So, is the skeleton pinned to the wall with a big-ass knife the remains of Captain Reynard? If it is, and 33 knew this was how Reynard died, then why didn't he question Fern's story of stabbing him and throwing him out of an airlock? Did he somehow not recognise the skeletal remains of his former captain? Or did he just go along with Fern's story because he was that desperate to have a captain? Point number 8. Did it throw anyone else for a second when Wim said he misses both his mum and dad, before he corrected Jod that he wouldn't be seeing his mum at all? Like, my mind started racing, wondering if this was going to be one of those rare instances of parents being separated but not by death in a Disney property. The way Wim says he won't be seeing his mum though does heavily imply she is deceased, but who knows? Maybe she's just a bad mum who doesn't care about seeing her kid, or maybe she can't be visited for some mysterious reason. Point number 9. What Jod says to Wim here is just even more evidence that Jod has either undergone some Jedi training in his life, or is at the very least knowledgeable of Jedi teachings. Jod telling Wim to forget about his parents because you shouldn't have attachments is a warped version of the Jedi teachings of letting go of attachments when the time comes. Like when you and old friends have drifted apart, or when a loved one has died, or when you let go of any possible attachment you might have to your parents when you're inducted into the Jedi Order as a youngling, which is what Jod might be referring to when he tells Wim that he himself chose to forget about his parents. Also, Jod's line of,
Your focus determines your reality,
is something Qui-Gon Jinn said to Anakin Skywalker in The Phantom Menace.
Your focus determines your reality.
It's pretty impossible Jod could have learned this directly from Qui-Gon, so it most likely was just a general Jedi teaching. Point number 10. I wonder if Jod or anyone else in the know is ever going to clue Wim on into the fact that you don't have to be a Jedi to be able to use the Force. Point number 11. Is it just me, or does Wim in his disguise look like Davy Jones from the Pirates of the Caribbean movies? The pirate hat obviously, but the fabric hanging from his face down to his waist and its colour resembles Davy Jones's tentacle beard. Point number 12. Oh hell yeah, that's Kelly MacDonald right there playing Pockets. Most people will probably recognise her voice from Brave, where she voiced Merida, but I recognise her from when she played Carrion Park in my favourite episode of Black Mirror, Hated in the Nation.
I didn't expect to find myself living in the future, but here I fucking well am.
Which also starred Faye Marsay and Ben Miles, who played Vel Sarther and Tay Colmer in Andor respectively, and also Duncan Powell, who played Rue Scott Melshi in both Andor and Rogue One. Point number 13. The name Dash Zentin immediately just makes me think of the character of Dash Rendar, who was introduced in Star Wars Legends with the Shadows of the Empire multimedia project back in 1996. And he has actually been introduced into canon via the Solo, a Star Wars story Tales from Vandor book, which was released in 2018. In both canon and Legends, he's a smuggler who pilots a YT-2400 light freighter, just like how Han Solo is a smuggler who pilots a YT-1300 light freighter. Point number 14. I wonder why KB says she can't go down into the spa. Is it because, like Fern says, her cybernetic attachments will actually corrode from the steam? Or could it be something else, maybe related to her medical condition in some way? Could the next episode be KB centered and focus on her medical condition that finally starts causing her problems? What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Point number 15. Oh wow, dude, I hope that server the Hut eats is okay. That's probably why they had him saying,
No, sir, not again. No, please, no.
This has happened before, and he survived, so he should be fine. Hopefully. Point number 16. If you're wondering why it doesn't make sense Jod could be Professor Umium Gorlox from Scipio, that's because Scipio is the homeworld of the Mune, and the headquarters of the intergalactic banking clan, and Jod doesn't look much like a Mune to me. Point number 17. So it's not just Captain Silvo, it's Mad Captain Silvo, and yet another one of his names is Jodwick Zank. Jodwick Zank? Seriously? Jodwick? That sounds like someone Hodorified John Wick down into Jodwick. Point number 18. Well, that just seems highly convenient that twisting that one nut made those pipes explode in such a way to knock the security guys off the walkway but not pose any danger to Jod, KB, and Neil. Point number 19. Just like with Jodwick Zank, Cathalops? Are you kidding me? That's like something someone would come up with when they couldn't remember what the hell Cthulhu was called. Cthulhu, Cathalops? Why don't you Cathalop on my dick? Point number 20. With this being Star Wars, it's not that much of a criticism to call out that there's power down in the maze of tunnels, as evidenced by all the lights, the laser decapitator, and the anti-grav field. But what I will call out, how Takrena's lair has never been infiltrated and plundered since it was left abandoned. Like, this being Star Wars actually now bolsters this criticism because you could just send down hundreds of droids to find the correct path. Use special equipment to drain away the acid and then just laser or blow your way into the pirate's lair. Or circumvent all of that by using mining droids to dig a tunnel under the lair and come up through the floor. That is, after you've done a more futuristic and technologically advanced version of a ground-penetrating radar scan to determine where it is. I get it being in a rocky cave is meant to be like a pirate hiding their treasure in a cave on a deserted island, or like the Room of Cups and Goblets in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. did, but logically Tak Renaud would have secured all his ill-gotten booty,
Or his Il Butungati.
in a room made from the strongest metal he could get his hands on, and that was hidden from scans, either naturally or technologically. Point number 21. This guy getting shot and then floating up to get impaled onto a whole bunch of spikes is pretty gnarly. It's not the gnarliest thing we've ever seen in Star Wars, granted, but in terms of this show, it hasn't been that violent so far. So seeing this happen was really kinda shocking, not gonna lie. Point number 22. Am I going insane? Why do these lights look like General Grievous's eyes? Point number 23. I mean, even with the acid drained, it isn't completely dry, so shouldn't the bottom of everyone's feet be disintegrating right now? Point number 24. Just like everyone's favourite pirate Hondo Ohnaka, Tak Renaud is a Weequay. Evidence? Assuming the skeleton pinned to the wall in the onyx cinder with a knife is Tak Renaud, since that's what 33 said had happened to his former captain, he got Michael Myers'd by his concubine. The skull of that skeleton appears to have jaw horns like a Weequay. The eye sockets match that of a Weequay. The skull throne in Tak Renaud's lair is the skull of a Weequay, and freeze framing through Tak Renaud's hologram, you can even make out that he has jaw horns. Everything points to Tak Renaud being a Weequay. Point number 25. So the mystery of the treasure on At-Atin is solved. It turns out the entire planet is an Old Republic mint, and the treasure is the money they produce, which also confirms the other jewels must have been doing their own thing, had their own great work, and that they weren't all the same as At-Atin, they weren't all mint planets. Point number 26. I like that Jod has known he could throw down this challenge against Fern anytime he wanted, and 33 would have had to respect it, but he only does it now after he's found out the coordinates to At-Atin and had it confirmed by Tak Renaud himself that the treasure is real. He's just been stringing these kids along, but now he's shown his true colours, a black flag. Point number 27. I feel like there might have been a bit of a slip up in the choreography here. Either Jude Law raised his hand to force block too early, or Ryan Kira Armstrong's second swing was meant to be faster. Either way, it just looks off to me. Anyone else? Point number 28. Good thing Wim didn't activate the lightsaber right into his leg, holding it upside down like that. At least it would have been better than if Luke had turned his dad's on when he was looking down the barrel of it, so to speak. Point number 29. I can only assume when Neil almost fell down into this trap earlier, Wim must have gotten a look down into it and saw it didn't lead to certain death, because if he didn't, this was just another reckless move from brainless Scarecrow Wim. Point number 30. Oh heck yes, please give us some Jod lightsaber action in the next episode, please. To round all this off, my most disliked part of the episode goes to the fact that Tak Renaud made his lair and stored his booty in a cave. Doing this in Star Wars is the real world equivalent of hiding your cash in a shoebox rather than in a metal safe. And my most liked part of the episode goes to seeing Kelly MacDonald playing a character in Star Wars. I loved her in Black Mirror, and it's awesome to see her here, but I'll be disappointed if it's just a one-off. Like how the character of Melna only appeared in episode 2, even though she seemed to have recurring character energy. I just hope Pocket wasn't melted to death in acid and shows up again in the future to try and murder Dash Zentin.
Zero friends again.
Point number 1. Point number 2. Oh hey, these aliens look like ones from the casino in Canto Bight. I wonder how a Last Jedi reference will go down with a certain segment of the Star Wars fandom. Point number 3. Hey, Pocket survived, that's awesome. Oh, and I guess it's alright that Urkel and the other pirate survived as well. Must have just been some nameless red shirts that got melted horrifically in acid. Good riddance to 'em, I say. Point number 4. I'm really starting to question how good of a first mate 33 actually was for Tak Renaud if he can be disabled this easily and consistently. Point number 5. If you're enjoying the video so far, give it a like to let me know, and if you're interested in seeing more, then make sure to subscribe and ding the bell. Point number 6. No, the trash crabs are so cute, I want one. I especially like the one with a droid leg for a shell. Point number 7.
See, they can talk. And that means they're intelligent.
Actually, Wim, I think you'll find
the ability to speak does not make you intelligent.
Point number 8. Huh, would you look at that? Frida seems to feel some remorse for betraying Jod, which is more than can be said for how she felt about betraying Red in Orange is the New Black. Yes, this is the second time I pointed out Dale Souls plays Frida in Orange is the New Black. What are you going to do about it? Point number 9. So this entire time I've been referring to KB's cybernetics as attachments, but now seeing how they actually go inside of her body, inside of her head, the more apt description would be implants. I assume as well KB mentioning about her running around on the freezing cold moon where Kim lives, and going days without maintenance is what has contributed to her displaying some odd behaviour throughout the show. Like when they were on at Akron, KB didn't hide when the headless statue was shot with a blaster, and she didn't get that Wim was going for a high five after she aimbotted all of the cans. Either that or she was so transfixed with the statue the blaster fire didn't faze her, maybe because she somehow recognised the statue, and as for the high five, maybe she's never high-fived before. Her telling Wim if Fern stopped being her friend she'd be back to having 0 friends again means she had no friends before Fern, and so maybe has just never in her life participated in a high five. Or maybe Wim was the inventor of the high five on at Atin. I mean, just look at how few times a high five has appeared in Star Wars canon according to Wikipedia. So just like the famous Klaus Heisler in our real world.
Oh, the high five. Not to toot my own horn, but I invented that.
Wim should have his name immortalised in at Atin's history books for coming up with this gesture. Point number 10. It's really interesting how KB with her cybernetics represents people with disabilities, and how some people can either be dismissive of people's disabilities or downplay how serious they are. This latter reaction usually comes from good intentions of not wanting the person to feel different to everyone else, but as KB says, she is different, and trying to treat her like she isn't doesn't exactly help her in the long run. That's not me saying she and other disabled people should be given preferential treatment, so to speak, or discriminated against or whatever, but just that her disabilities should be acknowledged in the sense that they should be taken into account and accommodated. Like, that's why access ramps are a requirement now. You can't expect the amount of mobility of someone with leg issues to be the same as someone with no leg issues. You ideally wouldn't discriminate against people in wheelchairs by denying them access to areas people who can walk can access. You would instead accommodate them in any way you can, like by installing ramps or lifts. Then there is also the angle of KB and other people with disabilities, for one reason or another, acting like their disabilities can't stop them from doing things those without disabilities can do. When Fern accurately guesses why KB says she can't go down into the spa, KB lies, saying that isn't the issue, because as she tells Wim, she doesn't want to end up ostracized due to her disability. She doesn't want to lose Fern, who she believes doesn't possess the patience to accommodate her disability, who KB thinks she expects KB to be able to do everything that she can do, which again would be like someone with no leg issues expecting someone in a wheelchair to be able to make it up a flight of stairs, just because they can, so they expect the wheelchair user to be able to as well. But then with the added element that the wheelchair user does then try to make it up the stairs on their own, because that's what the person they're following expects from them and they don't want to be left behind. This all also reminds me of John Locke in Lost, a man in a wheelchair who believes he can do anything those with no leg issues can do and wants to be treated as if he has no disability. Though the difference between KB and John is that John is in denial that his disability has, in fact, significantly affected what he is and is not actually capable of doing.
Don't tell me what I can't do!
KB isn't in denial over her disability. She accepts it, but both resents Fern for not understanding it limits what she's able to do, but then also downplays how much it limits what she's able to do herself, because she knows, or at least believes, Fern doesn't understand it limits what she's able to do, and that, again, she doesn't possess the patience to accommodate KB's disability. In KB's mind, it really is a no-win situation. Damned if she does and damned if she doesn't in regards to telling Fern to take her disability into account when thinking of things to do, because if Fern doesn't take it into account, then KB has to continue to act like her disability doesn't limit her, but if Fern does, then that would mean KB's disability would be now not just limiting what she can do, but also what Fern can do, which in KB's mind would result in Fern abandoning her to escape those limitations. Though of course later we see the two make up and come to an understanding over the issue, that Fern should be more aware and accommodating of KB's disability, and KB should be more trusting of Fern to not abandon her If she points out her disability will get in the way of whatever it is that Fern is wanting to do. Hopefully, in this point, I didn't say anything that came across as potentially ableist. I try to word everything carefully, but if I said something that did sound ableist or wrong in some other way, I apologise, it was not intentional. Point number 11. Damn, that metal melted then cooled real quick. Must be why KB told women to collect a specific type of metal. Also, anyone else getting Pepper helping Tony Stark replace his arc reactor vibes from all of this? Point number 12.
Step! And step! And step!
Being a big Tremors fan, during this scene with Fern and Neil, all I could think of was this part of Tremors 2.
And step. And step. And step.
Point number 13. Yeah, definitely getting Harry and Ron meeting Aragog in Chamber of Secrets vibes here, with KB and Wim meeting the Trash Crab God. Point number 14.
I'm always wrong about who's the good guy!
I mean, you were also wrong about Cathalos being a bad guy, so you're only 2 for 1 there, Wim, which ain't that bad. Point number 15. Lucky these Dune-esque carrier ship things aren't piloted by actual people, but can be piloted by someone on top of it via a set of controls. Also that they were going in the direction of where KB and Wim are for Fern and Neil to pick them up, because I'm pretty sure Fern's only able to control the one her and Neil are on. She's not controlling all of them. Also incredibly lucky that they managed to crash in such a way that none of them got hurt or died. But as the famous author J.R.R. Tolkien once rapped,
That's not what's called fantasy! It's meant to be what realistic!
so I shouldn't really complain. Point number 16. The Chekhov's gun of the emergency hull demolition sequencer pays off. I should have pointed out it was most likely a Chekhov's gun back when it came up in episode 2, but I'm glad I pointed out the Chekhov's gun of the school roof gun back in episode 4, because I'm willing to bet that will play its part when Jod, Brutus and the rest of the pirates show up on At Atin in the last 2 episodes. Point number 17. Okay, this whole concept of the Onyx Cinder shedding its outer hull like an insect is really cool and stands up to scrutiny. I actively tried to see if I could find any faults with this, and I really couldn't. I especially focused on Wim and how he could still be in a turret after it was left behind on the outer hull, but you do see him descend back down into the ship, so the seat platform must have automatically lowered itself to the other turret, then sealed itself off. Definitely a good thing this happened in atmosphere, because I can't think of any way that could work without whoever's in the gunner seat being exposed to the elements outside for a brief moment. So if they'd been off planet, Wim would have been in some way exposed to the vacuum of space, which would not have been good. Point number 18. This also explains why, even though Tak Renaud is a legend and Jod and the other pirates know about him and his ship, none of them ever recognized the Onyx Cinder, which would be like someone knowing who Hector Barbosa or Davy Jones is, but not recognizing the Black Pearl or the Flying Dutchman. It's because the armor Renaud said he put on the Onyx Cinder in his holo recording in the last episode, in preparation to head to At Atin, along with it being all rusted and battered from crash landing on At Atin, made the Onyx Cinder unrecognizable. Also, Tak Renaud believing he needed to reinforce his ship before heading to At Atin might have been because he found out about the gun on the school roof on At Akron, and prepared for the possibility that other such guns were also built into buildings on At Atin as well. To round all of this off, my most disliked part of the episode goes to just how easily 33 can be taken down by one shot from whatever this droid disabling gun is. I assumed when it happened back in episode 2 it was because he had been shot in the back and was hit in a weak spot, but in this episode he gets shot in the front and goes down like a sack of potatoes just as easily. It really does lessen how much of a threat he is and how good of a first mate he must have been to Tak Renaud. Is it because he's such an old droid that these disabling weapons are so effective against him? Or are these weapons pretty rare or expensive or maybe even new? Because thinking about it, if they're not, I would imagine they would have been used by every single trooper during the Clone Wars, since you just need to land one shot on a droid and it ends up disabled. I don't know, what do you guys think? And my most liked part of the episode goes to seeing the kids split up in a new way and how KB and Wim and Fern and Neil interact with each other. Each pair is able to talk to each other without it dissolving into an argument or one always having to acquiesce to the other. It was really neat to see, and I hope it helps them continue to get along and cooperate better in the last few episodes.
We're gonna be in so much trouble.
Point number 1.
This At-Atin of yours don't look like a treasure planet to me.
I like how they don't beat around the bush and literally call At-Atin a treasure planet. Just outright name dropping a movie that very well could have been an inspiration for this series. Point number 2. A planet hidden and protected by a storm really makes me think of Skull Island from the King Kong movies. An island hidden and protected by a storm. I think though that's probably where the similarities end. Like, I don't think in the last episode a giant ape is going to be revealed to be living on At-Atin. Could you imagine though if the supervisor was essentially King Kong? That'd be wild. Point number 3. Absolutely not shocked at all, Brutus ends up dead. Dude's been asking for it this entire time, especially when he said,
"Treasure or no, I'm gonna kill you first chance I get."
Point number 4. At first, I thought 33 saying a pirate captain can only lay claim to one vessel meant that a pirate captain couldn't have a fleet of ships. But I think it's more so he's saying that Jod can control more than one ship but can only be captain of one. It's like the conversation between Jack Sparrow and Barbossa towards the end of Pirates of the Caribbean. Jack suggests Barbossa should take the Dauntless for his flagship and become its captain. Then make Jack the Black Pearl's new captain so long as he sails under Barbossa's colours and gives him a cut of any plunder. 2 ships, 2 captains, but 1 fleet, or rather the makings of a fleet, controlled by 1 man.
Savvy.
Point number 5. If you're enjoying the video so far, give it a like to let me know, and if you're interested in seeing more, then make sure to subscribe. Point number 6.
Aye, but it'd be close enough.
33 literally just said,
The code is more what you'd call guidelines than actual rules.
Point number 7. So, in my very first point in my review of episode 4, I said this. While I agree they do look similar to Operation Cinder satellites, I disagree about them being at Akron's barrier. This planet's barrier is the same as At-Atin's barrier, a nebula. I would like to apologise for completely dismissing the idea that the satellites were in some way connected to the barrier. It just really did not occur to me to connect the red lights in At-Atin's nebula to the satellites in At-Akron's nebula, and that At-Atin would also have satellites in its nebula just like At-Akron. Jesus Christ, trying to say that last sentence made me sound like Crichton speaking Gelf in Red Dwarf. In my mind, seeing the red lights in At-Atin's nebula being laid out like a grid, I was picturing that within the nebula there was like a planet-wide force field net that deactivated a section, a square, to allow the Onyx Cinder through. That's what I imagined. Point number 8. With it being revealed that the Onyx Cinder wasn't Tak Renaud's main ship, that it was stolen because it's capable of making it past these satellites in the nebula around At-Atin, presumably from a location a Republic mint ship goes to drop off its cargo of credits, this explains why the pirates don't immediately recognize the Onyx Cinder when looking at its hologram. It's because Tak Renaud most likely wasn't in possession of the ship for very long before they both disappeared. Pirates probably just know the name of the ship because the tale of it being stolen spread. But all these years later, after its disappearance, what the ship originally was, a Republic mint ship, and what it looks like have been forgotten. That's why Jod calls the ship mysterious in episode 5.
Aboard the mysterious ship, the Onyx Cinder.
The only thing known about it now is its name and that Tak Renaud was its captain when he went to plunder At-Atin and both disappeared. Makes me wonder what Tak Renaud's previous ship was, what it was called, and where it is now. As per the pirate code, did Tak make someone else the captain of it when he became the captain of the Onyx Cinder? Did he move everything over to the Onyx Cinder and scuttle it? Did he sell it? Did he just hide it away somewhere? What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Point number 9. Did anyone else think Jod was actually going to step on the little alien rat thing? I did, and I got so worried. Point number 10. Jod here calling the kids weak, sheltered, and spoiled, coupled with him in episode 3 saying he's just like them, lost and alone, makes it seem like if Jod did used to be a Jedi youngling but had to go into hiding and resort to piracy to survive after Order 66, then he resents the kids for living the life that was stolen from him. Jedi younglings and Padawans, while not necessarily weak, were sheltered and spoiled in comparison to a number of other children out in the galaxy. They got an easy life, a life Jod, again if he was a Jedi youngling, was forced to give up, and so he had to resort to the hard life of piracy to survive. Jod is essentially just the darker version of Cal Kestis from the Star Wars Jedi games. Point number 11. The way Jod amateurishly waves the lightsaber in front of the kids could mean one of three things. First, if Jod did used to be a Jedi youngling, he never got any real training with wielding a lightsaber. Or second, Jod was never a Jedi youngling and so has never wielded a lightsaber before. Or third, this is just him trying to intimidate the kids who wouldn't know if Jod was wielding a lightsaber properly or not. Point number 12. With 33 walking towards Jod before getting his head cut off, and now with this security droid, we see again the jerky motion of using a prop droid compared to where the droid is CGI. It just ruins my suspension of disbelief every time I notice it. Is it the same for anyone else or just me? Point number 13. And the voice of the supervisor, my lovely audience, is none other than the one and only Stephen Fry. Couple this casting of a famous actor as this mysterious figure with Jod later saying to a security droid,
Better than dealing with a droid.
Really does seem to be hinting towards the subversion that the supervisor actually won't be flesh and blood, but instead will be a droid. What kind of droid though, and how intelligent it is? To use Halo terms, whether it's a dumb AI or smart AI, we'll just have to wait for the final episode to find out. Point number 14. I assume the security droids got people off of the center circle of the field, but I think they really should have gone the extra step of getting people off of the field entirely. I mean, what if there'd been kids or elderly people on those wedges when they started rising? And speaking of people being on the wedges even after the announcement of an incoming ship, this implies it's been so long since a ship has visited that people have just completely forgotten that you shouldn't be standing out on that field when the ship comes into land. Point number 15. It's very interesting that we get a long close-up shot of the ship being securely clamped to the landing platform. In universe-wise, this would just be to ensure no one on the planet stole the ship after it had been loaded up with credits. But story-wise, this is yet another Chekhov's gun. The ship being clamped this securely will come into play in the last episode. Bet on it. Point number 16.
Quite the operation you have here.
We'd hoped you'd be pleased.
Very impressive.
I'd hoped you would be pleased.
Point number 17. 1139, awfully close to 1138, a number which appears a lot in George Lucas media, as it's a reference to George's student short film Electronic Labyrinth THX 11384EB, which later became George's first theatrically released movie THX 1138. Point number 18. With how emotional Jod gets seeing all of the credits, I suspect that the credits are going to be his demise. And I mean that literally, that somehow Jod is going to end up in a position where he ends up being buried under a mountain of falling credits. And the last shot of him is going to be his forearm sticking out, his fist unclenching as he dies, releasing the credits that he was holding, which I think would be a fitting poetic end for old Dash Zentin here. Point number 19. Jod channeling Anakin Skywalker / Darth Vader right here.
There are too many of them. What are we going to do?
To round all this off, my most disliked part of the episode goes to just how cruel Jod is now acting towards the kids. Like, intimidating them with his lightsaber was already going too far, but then to also threaten to slice up the kids' parents? Jod really does need to meet his end in the last episode. And my most liked part of the episode goes to 33 siding with the kids in the claimsies-unclaimsies debate, bending the rules to come to their aid. I hope he can be fixed up in the last episode. I don't want him being beheaded to be the last we see of him.
The real good guys.
Point number 1. The beginning of this episode really highlights the childlike naivety and innocence of the adults of At-Atin, that they don't question at all if Jod is actually an emissary or not, and they take him activating his lightsaber as just him showing them he's a Jedi and can be trusted. It'd be like IRL, a cop making sure you know he's a cop and can be trusted by pulling out his pistol and firing off a round. Point number 2. No, the supervisor is not Takrenod. No, the supervisor is not a Mykian, aka the same race as Neil, and no, the supervisor is not Jar Jar Binks. It is, as many guessed, including myself, a droid. A droid that looks like if HAL 9000 let themselves go a bit. Also of note is that this room has the same at-planet coordinate pillars as At-Akron, but At-Akron didn't have a big old Chungus droid in the middle of its room. This could either mean At-Akron's supervisor wasn't a droid, or if it was a droid, it was stripped for parts until there was nothing left. Point number 3.
I have been watching over you and your daughter with great interest.
We will watch your career with great interest.
Point number 4. The supervisor saying he received a message from the Republic about how all the Jedi are now traitors may sound like a contradiction to what's been established that no messages are allowed through the barrier. But what we've actually been told is that
communication outside the barrier is not permitted.
And then in this episode, we see Jod transmits a holo image of himself outside the barrier to call in the other pirates. So, combining these two facts, we come to the conclusion that communications can pass through the barrier in both directions, but only via the supervisor tower, and it's up to the supervisor whether he responds or not. And it's also up to the supervisor whether he tells the population of At-Atin about any messages or not, since it appears the supervisor never informed them about the Jedi being labelled traitors. If he had, the kids' parents wouldn't have trusted him the moment he activated his lightsaber. I wonder what other messages the supervisor received, but didn't pass on to the people of At-Atin. Could he have actually received a message saying the Republic was now the Empire, but kept it to himself for fear it might affect the great work? The way the supervisor says,
"The Republic,"
makes me think he might. Point number 5. If you're enjoying the video so far, give it a like to let me know, and if you're interested in seeing more, then make sure to subscribe. Point number 6. The absolute incompetence of these many security droids not being able to take down a single man with a lightsaber. I mean, I know they're only droids, not like clone troopers, but still, all they had to do was fire simultaneously, and there'd be no way for Jod to block every shot. Even after Jod stabs into the supervisor, the droids kept moving, so why didn't they just shoot into Jod's exposed back? Point number 7. Speaking of Jod stabbing the supervisor, whoever designed it should be fired in my opinion, for giving it such a design flaw that it ends up disabled when its eye and what's a few feet behind it are damaged. Like, was that where the droid's brain was? Why put it there instead of in the center, where it would be more protected? Just makes me think of the spaceship designs that have the bridge at the very front of the ship with a big glass window. Battlestar Galactica got it right by putting the CIC still towards the front, but deep inside where it's actually protected. Point number 8. So, Jod stabbing the supervisor for some reason disabled the security droids that were in the same room. Then we see power going out across the city for all buildings, vehicles, and other security droids, suggesting a connection between the supervisor going offline and the power going out. But I don't think that's the case. I don't think the supervisor being taken out is what made all the power in the rest of the city turn off. I think that was actually Jod, since the consoles in the supervisor room remain powered. And he says in his transmission to Gunter that he seized control of At-Atin systems. Still though, this doesn't explain why the droids in the supervisor room deactivated. My theories are that either the droids' systems were overloaded due to being so close to the supervisor when he was destroyed, or that they were being controlled directly by the supervisor and so went offline due to him being destroyed. Point number 9. I love Neil's finishing the bubble bath he was taking back when Wim interrupted in episode 1. Point number 10. God damn, the aim of these pirates is worse than stormtroopers. I mean, I know the hoverbikes are small, fast-moving targets, but it's not like they're zigzagging around. They're driving in a straight line. Just shoot ahead of them. Actually, no, don't do that. Don't shoot at the children or anybody else, please. Point number 11. I guess they went the way through the woods that Fern and KB would use to shortcut to school, and not the way Wim went, since they don't come across the massive hole left by the Onyx Cinder unearthing itself. Point number 12. The moment KB decided to lead them into the school, I knew for a certainty that Neil was going to get separated, so that he could then go to the roof and find the gun to use it against the pirates. Just a perfect setup and payoff of the literal Chekhov's gun. Point number 13. If the supervisor was suspicious of Jod, then why did he allow the security droids to start loading credits onto the Onyx Cinder? It's not as if Jod would have known if credits were being loaded onto the ship or not after heading off to meet the supervisor. Actually thinking about it, why is the Onyx Cinder back on the surface at all? The last time we saw it, it had descended on the platform down to the underground vaults. Why didn't the supervisor just keep it underground until he confirmed that Jod was actually an emissary, and then send it back to the surface when he was ready to leave? Thinking about it some more, what if there hadn't been a second ship that Jod wanted to get through the barrier? I mean, that's the entire reason he wanted to see the supervisor, to get the other ship and his crew through. But if they didn't exist, would the Onyx Cinder still have been loaded up with credits? And would Jod have just been simply allowed to leave, no questions asked? Or would it turn out he'd have to speak to the supervisor anyway to get the Onyx Cinder unclamped? Point number 14. Hey, 33 lives! I'm glad that him being decapitated wasn't the last we saw of him. That would have been just too depressing. Point number 15. At-Atin having a hyperspace route that leads directly to it so that the X-Wings can get there in 2 flaps might sound convenient, but when you take into account At-Atin is an official, though hidden, Republic planet, it makes sense they would have chosen a planet that's easily reachable by them and their emissaries time and distance wise to turn into a mint, and then just make it hard to find and land on unless you know what you're looking for and have the right ship. Point number 16. So Jod wasn't a youngling survivor of Order 66 politics or a random Force sensitive with no connection to the Jedi, Jod was essentially Ezra Bridger, a Force sensitive street orphan found and trained by a Jedi. But unlike Ezra, Jod's master died not that long after taking him on as an apprentice, and he ended up back on his own again, turning to piracy to survive. Point number 17. Did anyone else think when Jod was force pulling the lightsaber, it was going to activate slip out of the kid's hands and impale him? That would have been a brutal way for him to go, and technically his death would have ended up being on the kid's hands. So in my opinion, it's a good thing that didn't happen. Don't want a repeat of the controversy of Anakin and Luke being such young killers. Point number 18. Oh, that is so awesome seeing a B-Wing use its composite beam for, I'm pretty sure, the first time in live action. Really cool. Point number 19. The look Jod gets on his face the last time we see him seems to hint to me that he's not given up yet, which I don't know how to feel about. As I said in my review of the last episode, I thought we were going to see Jod die, maybe by being buried under a mountain of credits. And despite this episode trying to make you feel sympathetic towards Jod by explaining his backstory, having him say he never wanted anyone to get hurt, and throwing away his gun instead of shooting Fern, Wim and their parents, I still feel like Jod should have gotten what was coming to him more than just him not getting the treasure he was after. But then again, he is Jod Silver, aka John Silver, and Long John Silver doesn't die at the end of Treasure Island, so what do you guys think? Were you satisfied with Jod's ending? Point number 20. Speaking of ending, I've seen a fair number of people say they weren't happy with how suddenly the episode ended, that we didn't get a wrap-up scene similar to, say, the end of Goonies, with all the kids and their parents watching Jod and the other pirates in handcuffs being taken away. I didn't mind the ending. I thought it wrapped up quite nicely while leaving some threads open that could be resolved in the future, though maybe not in a second season, because despite being a well-liked show, with nowhere near the level of moronic fandom menace slop made about it compared to The Acolyte, reading straight from an article on GameRant.com, according to Nielsen's December 2nd to 8th streaming data, Star Wars Skeleton Crew premiered with the lowest viewership of any Star Wars series in its first week. The 2-episode premiere scored less than 382 million minutes watched. This is roughly 20% lower than the ratings for Star Wars The Acolyte's premiere week, the previous record holder for the lowest viewership of any Star Wars series debut. Star Wars Skeleton Crew also became the first series in the franchise to fail to debut in Disney Plus's top 10 originals. The article then lists some theories as to why Skeleton Crew struggled. Fans place most of the blame squarely on The Acolyte, which has its supporters but was largely panned. Some bad faith actors were review bombing Star Wars The Acolyte and unfairly criticising the series for foolish reasons such as Ki-Adi-Mundi's cameo, or having the audacity to feature several characters who weren't white males. However, others felt it didn't quite work out for legitimate reasons. Regardless of why, many didn't like Star Wars The Acolyte, which was reflected in the show's declining viewership over its run. Some fans believe viewers are still sour towards the franchise after The Acolyte and have opted to skip Star Wars Skeleton Crew. It could be argued that Star Wars Skeleton Crew did not entice audiences because it lacked familiar and popular characters from the franchise. Obi-Wan Kenobi, Ahsoka, and Andor benefited from having popular characters from past Star Wars projects, and The Mandalorian created a new fan favourite in Grogu who could reliably draw in viewers. While some fans want the Star Wars franchise to move away from nostalgia and the Skywalker saga, ratings suggest most viewers aren't willing to tune in unless they see some recognisable faces. That's reportedly why Lucasfilm is keen on bringing Daisy Ridley's Rey back for multiple Star Wars projects, and the article ends acknowledging that, of course, Star Wars Skeleton Crew's ratings for episodes 3 to 8 could improve thanks to good word of mouth. While there is reportedly a plan to bring back some Skeleton Crew characters in Dave Filoni's upcoming Star Wars movie, a second season for the show is likely off the table if viewership doesn't increase. Consequently, Disney and Lucasfilm may take this as proof that new characters and original stories don't work and that nostalgia is the way to move the Star Wars franchise forward. And that mention of Skeleton Crew characters returning for Dave Filoni's Star Wars movie, the crossover movie connecting The Mandalorian, Ahsoka, the Book of Boba Fett, and I guess now Skeleton Crew, is what I meant by threads left open at the end of Skeleton Crew that could be resolved in the future. The most likely thread being the fate of Jod. Maybe he somehow escaped off at Atin, or maybe he was captured and locked up, but I could see him ending up aiding the heroes of all the other series in Dave Filoni's crossover movie with their efforts to defeat Thrawn, though only because he's offered cold hard credits in return for his help. he is still a pirate after all. But we'll just have to wait and see if the viewership of episodes 3 to 8 and the positive reception and popularity of the show convinces Disney to one day make a season 2. To round all this off, my most disliked part of the episode goes to the oddity of the Onyx Cinder being loaded up with credits then risen back to the surface despite the supervisor being suspicious of Jod. Just doesn't really make any sense to me. And my most liked part of the episode goes to Neil going from being in a bubble bath to him firing a freaking laser cannon. Little Dude can do it all. Thank you everyone for watching Triple S Reviews. Don't forget, if you enjoyed the video, give it a like to let me know, and if you want to see more then make sure to subscribe. I also have a variety channel where I post a variety of different videos. If any of them interest you, check them out. I've been Triple S, you've all been amazing, and I shall see you all in the next video.